Ah, the world of Tapestry. We're gonna build a civilization. Sort of. It's all coming up right after this. Hey YouTube, this is Pet Tech, and what I have before me is probably the most hyped game of 2019. Tapestry is a game from 1 to 5 players from Stonemaier Games. It goes on the heels of a lot of very other successful games from that company, like Viticulture, Scythe, of course, and Wingspan. I've played Scythe. I've never played Viticulture, but I'd like to. And Wingspan, of course, is a family favorite. But this game in particular, is quite the paradox. So let me tell you very quickly how the game works, give you a sense of the gameplay. I'm not going to go through all the rules, although I have to say the rule book is incredibly short. It's basically this little 4-page pamphlet with lots of pictures and descriptions and things. This is nothing to look over, so long as you have the supplement. Now, it came with 2 of these player guides, which are excellent. One side's got all these technology cards, which I'll tell you about in a second, and the other side has a written description of everything that you can do along these tracks, which again, I'll tell you about. Well, I'll tell you about it now. So what you're looking at is a typical 3-player game, and this is actually after the game's over. And I just want to show you a little bit about how things work. Let's start with the player board. So when the game starts off, you won't have any tapestry cards. You'll have just invented fire. And that goes along with, of course, this sort of nonsense civilization that you're going to create. So every round when you start, you're going to collect resources. And in the beginning, you'll just have these first blocks on either side opened up. And these icons that represent your resources will be moved to the appropriate column. Normally you'll receive one of these, which is one of these little land tiles that go in the grid in the middle. And you'll receive a tapestry card, which you'll be using later on. After you've made your moves on the board and paid for them with these resources, then it'll be time for your next turn. So you can take the tapestry card that you received earlier, or another tapestry card that you got based off actions on the board. So you'll lay your tapestry card down, and you will get either this special ability or whatever this gives you for this round. Then you'll collect resources based on how many of these houses you removed. Of course, every time you remove a house, it simulates you making some sort of achievement, and you'll get more resources. Like in this case, if I remove this house, I would get another star, which is one of these, which I could take up to 3. 1, 2, 3. It of course unlocks other things too, and if you get all the way to the end, it's usually worth a lot of points. Mostly what you'll be doing on your turn is moving up these tracks. There are 4 different types of tracks on the board. In the beginning, it costs very little, maybe 1 resource. Then it'll be a particular resource and then the other resource. It gets a little bit more expensive and then cheaper right at the end. Cheaper but more specific. Every time you move your cube up, you'll pay the resources and then you'll get to do whatever the action is. These actions are different on every single one of these tracks. This track in particular is about invention, which is mostly about pulling these invention cards, which again can give you more resources in the form, like this one gives you a tapestry card, or lets you move one of those buildings. Thank you, nails. Other tracks will let you either pick up tiles or place tiles on your board. Many times when you place these, they'll have a resource in the middle, like in this case I would get another tapestry card. You also get points by matching the different types of land or water types. Basically, you get 1 point for each of these that you match up. Now, moving along the Conquer track lets you take your little outposts and place them on the map and take over new territories or topple other people's territories. And the Science track in the green over here gives you a number of different things you can do, but probably the most fun is rolling this die and moving up on some random track. The problem is, early on, you'll get to move up without a benefit. You can choose not to take the move, but then you kind of moved up for nothing. But it is strangely fun to roll this die and just get sort of a random benefit, and that'll help you move up, albeit randomly. It'll help you move up on a track that maybe you weren't going for, so that's can be a benefit. So a number of these things that you'll see on here will involve these small buildings. If you notice, they match the buildings that are here on your player boards. And right next to your player board, you'll have this little map, which is sort of representing a city that you own. So as you take a building off, you're going to get this benefit in your income phase, but also you get to add it to your map and possibly get a benefit. Like each of these that are filled in, anytime you've got all these filled in, and the dots that are there count as already being filled in by something else. Anytime those are filled in, you get another resource, which can really help in a tight spot. And when you've got a whole line of these filled in, that's worth more points every time you do an income turn. Now, sometimes through cards, and sometimes by being the first to these different levels throughout the board, you'll receive these buildings. These buildings look really neat. All they really do, they don't give you any special powers or anything like that. All they mainly do is take up space on your map. That can be handy because you want resources and you want to complete lines. And these fill in a lot of spaces. Sometimes imperfectly, because like this round one fits these 4, but if you use your imagination, I think you could figure it out. There are 16 different civilizations that you could possibly get for this game. This particular one lets you add buildings here instead of the map, and give you resources for doing so. Like every time you place something down, you get the resource that's listed there. Each of these civilizations is a little bit different. There's 16 different ones that you can use that you could possibly get. In the beginning of the game, what we do is we'll hand out 2, and you get to pick one. And if you don't like either one, we kind of house rule it where you can draw another one. So really what we do is 2 with a possibility of 3 different civilizations and let someone pick the one that they really want. Some of these make more sense than the others. They're a little bit easier to play than the others. And I think it's really best, this game's best played when people enjoy the civilization that they ended up with. Or at least they feel like it's something that they could work with. There's a lot more to this game. Some tracks here even go into space, which is my favorite thing to do. Yes, they don't just have land tiles, they have space tiles too. And they're really hard to get to, but usually the benefits are pretty great. The science track, while it's neat, is kind of rough going at first. Those first couple of moves don't give you a whole lot. The military track is probably one of my favorites, and yeah, it makes it so you can conquer this board, which isn't, it's not so in your face as any other kind of conquering game. It's really kind of it can be fairly anticlimactic, but it does feel good to expand your territory and claim outposts for yourself. Probably the coolest thing is when you conquer by taking one of your outposts and sticking it on an adjacent tile. You get to roll these dice and either pick a resource or pick some points. I usually pick the points. Another funny thing is just like when you lay these tapestry cards down, you can kind of imagine your little nonsense civilization and the trials and tribulations that it's undergone. And it's kind of interesting how it works. And while it may not be based in any reality, it's definitely entertaining to think about. Even the smallest components for this game are very highly detailed. I love these things, and all these do are cover little squares on your player mat. But man, they're so cool. I mean, really, really highly detailed little pieces. And they're all a little different. Well, I mean, each player will have identical versions of these different colored pieces. But the 4 that you get are all unique little buildings of different types. And the buildings that you get for the various levels that you've achieved and things like that, these buildings are all really cute little buildings, very whimsical. Except my favorite thing is to blast into space. And it's really interesting to think, your civilization that's gone from fire to space travel and then discovered batteries. Now, without this player guide, this game would be kind of complicated and would definitely have more pages in its rule book. But that being said, after a game or two, you really get a sense of the iconography. It's really pretty clear as to what it does, and it's not very difficult to pick up at all. The real brain twister with this game is figuring out all the different combinations, because this is it's sort of an engine builder game. It's got a lot of different interactions that once you master them, or once you kind of unlock this thing or that thing, you'll discover interesting combos, and it's all about getting points. I'll admit, on my first couple of plays of this game, I found it rather complex as far as like figuring out how to get points or how to maximize the points that you get. But after playing this quite a bit, I've learned to sort of enjoy being able to alter my play style just because of a random Tapestry card that I've gotten, or a civilization that I'm trying to make work. Now, this game has civilization as a theme, but it's sort of a nonsensical civilization because you can develop like space travel before batteries. Now, of course, this is all happening in sort of your imaginary civilization, and those batteries that you develop aren't necessarily alkaline batteries. They could be some special space batteries. Who knows? But this game isn't really meant to be based in reality. It's all sort of a perceived theme. Another criticism of this game has been some of the components. These beautiful building components, which were the inspiration for even creating this game, are beautiful pre-painted things that don't quite fit on the little maps that they're supposed to fit on. But that's okay. What most people aren't okay with is the price tag, because this game runs for about $100. That being said, the components are excellent, and they are really neat to look at. This is a game that you're going to keep in the family for years and years. So if you take good care of it, I think that that's an investment that you could probably carry on for a couple of generations. Every component of this game has a real interesting tactile feel. That these cards are sort of made of this thin plastic and have a texture to them, and the same for the little city cards, and even the player boards. Another downside that a lot of people have mentioned it already is that for some players of the game, you could really get stuck with just some bad luck. These Tapestry cards, you're going to lay one of these down at the beginning of every turn, and they kind of either give you a bonus, or they give you some sort of power that you have for that turn. And if you end up with a bad one, if you end up with one that doesn't kind of mesh with where you're going already, it's kind of a downer. It can feel like a complete wasted turn, and there's only about 3 turns to lay these down, so you can't waste one. It's also impossible to go up all the way through maybe more than one track. I think you could probably do 2 tracks, but not if you went anywhere else. And the temptation is always there to try to travel up one of these other things, because maybe you want some more Tapestry cards, or you want some invention cards, or you want to explore, or you want to move your little buildings to another place. You're always torn between these different options, but what's great is it adds to the replayability, because next time maybe you'll choose differently. Every game I've played, I've deliberately made it a goal to get to the end of one particular track. And anytime I deviate from that, it's just to kind of help this goal along. So if you're new to this game, keep that in mind. You're going to mainly make achievements on one of these, and usually the one on the opposite side is supplemental. One thing helps another thing. Another thing that can happen is some of these civilizations, some of them are not entirely easy to understand. You can go on BGG or different places and read about anything that kind of confuses you, but some of them really don't work, or don't work well for 2 players. Something else to mention too is that Stonemaier Games has put out an errata that's based specifically about these different civilizations, And there's some minor alterations that you make at setup to kind of help balance the game out a little bit more. So every now and then, somebody's really not going to have a good time. Uh, it's a game where you can in fact, with a combination of maybe hard to understand or not great Civilization and some bad Tapestry cards, and you're just going to have no chance in watching someone else just kind of run away with the game. It's also absolutely possible to be in last place up until just the last couple of turns with some really smart moves, really bring up the points and just pass everybody out in the end. It's a really interesting puzzle. It's a lot of fun. It's very tactile. It's a great game to look at. It's a great game to pick up and touch. Definitely easy to pick up and easy to teach, which is the best thing. Easy to teach, perhaps difficult to master. And the thing is, too, it's going to be a different game every time you play. There's so many invention cards to go through. There's an equal amount of Tapestry cards, all with different variations, usually along political themes. And each one can shape your game and shape your strategy. And it's a completely new game and a new strategy every time you play. I haven't played the solo version of this, but you can play this solo. It's got an automa, much like Wingspan. So if you want to learn it really well before you bring it to your family and try to convince them to play, that's an option too. A lot of people out there like solo games too, and I'm glad that they worked that into this. Basically, when I got Wingspan, I learned the solo version of the game, and I played that probably 3 or 4 times before I ever tried to teach it to anyone else, and it made a huge difference in my confidence in playing the game. I was lucky enough to win this game for my favorite podcast that I listen to, this Tabletop Game Talk. Chris, Kitty, and Fletcher, thank you so much. This has been a terrific game. I've really enjoyed learning it. My wife and child don't like it when I win, but that, thankfully for them, is pretty rare. I won my first game the other night against Holly. Holly absolutely dominates me on every single game we play. Kerrigan is always super lucky too, and whenever she's in the mix, I have to be careful because she makes a lot of sneaky moves and usually ends up winning a lot also. But thank you, Tabletop Game Talk, for the game. It is really cool. It's going to be in my family for years to come. While I can't say that this is my favorite game ever, it is definitely a lot of fun to pull out, and I feel like I'm playing a new game every single time I play it. Some of them have been great, some of them have been meh, but it really is a lot of fun, and I can see this on my family's shelves for years to come. That's all I got for you this week, but until we meet again, enjoy your games, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.